Hello, thank you for choosing to join this breakout session on using Teams more effectively. My name's Steven Payne. I'm a learning delivery specialist with the Microsoft team, and I'm based in Perth, Western Australia, the beautiful land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. If you have any questions while we go through this session today, feel free to ask your question in the Q&A window, and I will be able to answer those questions there. If you are watching the recording of this, you can contact me afterwards on Twitter at Standout Ed, and you can also email me at spayne@standouted.com. If you find anything useful or have something great to share, please do so with the hashtag EduDay2022. This session is for people who've already started using Teams and want to get more out of it. So we're going to show you some great ways that you can use channels effectively. We're going to look at assignments, feedback, social and emotional learning, and ways that you can monitor student progress and engagement within Microsoft Teams. Okay, before we explore the advanced features of Microsoft Teams, let's just have a look at what it is and what features you have available. I like to think of Microsoft Teams as a hub. All of your Microsoft 365 apps can be accessed via Teams. So on the right here, we've got calls, chat, and those organized teams where you can have files and apps and other content all together. There's a whole range of Microsoft 365 apps, from the familiar Word, Excel, PowerPoint. These can all be embedded and edited and shared within Microsoft Teams, along with some of the online only apps. I wonder if you know these two here without the initials on. We've got Forms in the middle. If you know this one or this one, hey, why not share what it is in the chat? I'll leave it as an exercise for you. So you can do all sorts of things inside a team, and the clue is in the name. It is a team. You can have conversations, you can work on files together, you can have video meetings, share tasks, videos, and apps, depending on what's been enabled for your school or establishment. There are 4 different types of teams within Microsoft Teams in a school, TAFE, or university. Classes, which is where you would generally have a teacher or teachers and a group of students. A PLC, or professional learning community. You can have a staff team, and another one which the other team might be for sports clubs or for societies and those sorts of things. In today's session, we're just going to look at classes, how an educator would use Teams with their students. So what do you get in a class team? Well, you've got a standard structure where you can set up channels, and I'm going to give you some great hints on using channels later on in this session. You've got an area where you can share files, and you've got notebooks as well. So you've got an area to store all of your digital files called class materials, and you've got kind of 2 ways of using it. Class materials or class resources are generally read-only to the students, but then you've also got areas where students can create files and share files freely as well. And each channel has its own file store, so it makes things really simple to keep organized within Teams. You also have a OneNote class notebook. So when you create a team for a class, you can also choose to create a class notebook. And if you haven't used class notebooks before, it's an extension of OneNote that allows you collaborative areas and read-only sections, and an area for each student to work in independently and privately as well. So definitely worth checking out. You can share and create assignments within Microsoft Teams. So a teacher can create an assignment and assign it to all of the students in the class, or to a subset of the students in the class. And we're going to look at some great tips on making the most out of assignments a little bit later in this session. There's also the reading progress, which is a new app as part of the assignments within Microsoft Teams. So you can actually send out a passage of text from within Teams or from a bank of texts, and you can monitor students' reading fluency. So it will look at the speed they're reading, their accuracy, whether they're mispronouncing words. So if you haven't checked out reading progress, and that sounds like it might be useful for you, go and search on the web for reading progress. You'll find lots of information. A really nice addition to the Microsoft Teams experience. So now we're going to look at some really great ways on making the most out of Teams. So you've got your Teams set up. How can you make the most of it? Here we go. Using channels within Microsoft Teams can be a real game changer for your learning environment. There are many ways that you can use channels, and I'm going to show you some tips so that you can make the most out of it so that you have an engaging and organized team. So first of all, let's look at the different types of channel that you can have. There are 3 types of channel: general, standard, and private. A general channel exists in every team. There's always a general channel and you can't change the name of it. So it's good to think about how you might want to make the most of that. Then you've got a standard channel, and you can make as many of those as you need. And then you can have a private channel that allows you to have just a certain number of people in that channel, and it's not visible to the rest of the team. So let's start with a general channel. Because this exists in every single team, it might be a good idea to use it for a standard purpose. So you might use it as your first place you go to, whether that's with remote learning or whether that's in face-to-face learning at school. It might be that you only allow the teacher to post in there. So that's where the important notices and announcements happen. It may be that your assignments and grades and information relating to that is all posted in the general channel. Depending on how you've organized your classroom, you may have a separate channel, a standard channel to post assignments in. And that's entirely up to you. But I normally think of the general channel as somewhere where the teacher can post, maybe students can respond, but that's the one place where they go to at the start of the day or the start of the topic. With a standard channel, you can see a few examples there. It will obviously depend on the age of the students and what subjects they're doing, etc. But a couple of things to bear in mind is less is more. So try and keep the number down. I think once it gets to over 10, it can be quite difficult to find what you need. So in a primary school, you might have a channel for each subject. In a high school, in a subject class, you might have different channels where students can ask questions. You might have a place where assignments are shared. And another way of organizing it is to use numbers or emojis. So a quick visual reference of what that content is. And remember, each channel can have discussions. It can have its own tabs along the top, so you can share different content in the different channels. And if you get the organization right, then it just keeps things a little bit more organized. Private channels are can be seen with the little padlock next to the name of the channel. And when you create a channel, you can choose whether it's a standard channel or a private channel. So if you've got a group of teachers, or perhaps you've got a learning support assistant working with you, you might want to have a private channel where you can have discussions and share resources without the students seeing it. Or you might want to set up small group stations or breakout rooms or particular area for project-based learning. So it's a really neat way if you want to have small groups working together, asking questions without the whole class seeing what's happening. So private channels are a really useful way of doing that. Just bear in mind, some schools or departments may not have allowed private channels. That's something that can be turned on at an admin level. So do check if you actually can make private channels before you try. So let's just have a quick look at some of the settings there. So in a general channel, you'll notice that you can actually set the permission up for the whole channel. You just click next to general and go to channel settings. And you may choose to say only owners can post messages. And that's generally what I do when I set up a new class channel. It might be me and my head of department, or me and my education assistant are the only ones that can actually post messages, but other people can respond to them. Also, when you post an individual message in any channel, you can actually choose who can reply. So you might decide that you're going to put up an announcement and you don't actually want to turn it into a discussion. So whether this is in a general channel or a standard channel, you can actually edit your post and then click on this little down arrow here and can choose who can actually post or who can reply to that post in your channel. Some of the standard channels settings, and you can set this up for every channel. So there are three main things. You can have it so that only staff can post messages, or you can have it with moderation, so that if a student posts a message, it's got to be approved by one of the owners of the class, so the teacher or the education assistant, or something like that. Or you could say that everyone can start a new post without the moderation. So you've got those things about who can actually post in a channel. A couple of other things about channel settings. You can actually choose, if you go into the settings across your whole team, you can decide who can, whether people can delete messages, whether they can edit their messages. So this can be quite useful if someone posts a message and they've made a spelling mistake or they've missed an attachment or something like that. If you allow editing, then that just keeps things nice and simple. They can quickly just press the edit button and correct their message. The other thing you can do is decide what fun stuff is allowed. So you can decide in a channel whether you're going to allow GIFs and stickers in that particular channel. So it may be that you allow that in a class discussion, but you don't allow that in a in an announcements channel or something like that. So you do have a few options there. Now I'm going to share some tips and good practice for making engaging assignments for your students. So you can get to assignments from the assignments tab, or inside each team you've got an assignments button. So I've got my assignments here and I can create a new assignment. So just as a reminder, there are three types of assignment. You can either create a quiz, which is a multiple choice quiz using Microsoft Forms. You can reuse an existing assignment, so perhaps you've created one in a previous year or you've used one with a different class. You can reuse that. That really saves a lot of time if you are teaching the same courses to multiple classes. And then you've got an assignment which is starting an assignment from scratch. So what I want to do is just show you a couple of things that I think are really worth considering, and take a little bit of time, but definitely are effective for the students and will save you time in the long run. So first of all, once you've created your assignment, the title really is the only thing that is required. So the title might be a reference to an exercise book and some problems to do, or it might be a reference to somewhere else in Teams. It might be referring to a channel and a conversation. But more often than not, there'll be instructions and there'll be some resources. So I just want to highlight a few of the things to consider. So first of all, the title, as I've said, is the only thing that is required, but you might want to add a tag as well. So I've added a tag here called Chapter 6, and we've got a few different assignments to do with Chapter 6. So that will help both the teacher and the student find their assignments quickly. Those tags could refer to a chapter, they could refer to a subject in a primary school, they could refer to a particular unit in a high school. Also, adding the Instructions is a really useful thing to do. So perhaps you want to put in your learning outcomes here. You can just copy and paste from somewhere else. And I like to include emojis. So if I want the students to read something that's going to help them or watch a video, I'll include an emoji there. And if I'm consistent with that, then the students know what to expect. Now, I've also added some resources, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of resources that you can add. So I've added here a page from a OneNote book, so students can actually complete their task in that homework book. And then I've actually added a document from our files that students can read and refer to. So there are actually a number of different things that you can attach as resources, and you can see here that you can bring in a file from your OneDrive or from somewhere else in Teams. You can also link to a page from your class notebook, or even upload directly from your computer. So any kind of digital resource you can quickly give access to the students. But also last year was added this tool to be able to add a new resource. So if you haven't actually got something ready-made, you can just open up a Word document, for example, create a new Word document and make a table or put the instructions into there. As well as the standard Office files, Word, Excel, PowerPoint and Class Notebook, you can now record a video. So maybe you want to give some instructions verbally to students. So this can be great for languages or for music where you actually want to share a video. Students can also respond with a video in the same way. And you can also share a whiteboard. So you might want to put a table or use a whiteboard template and share that with students. So there's a couple of really nice tools there to support assignments. The other thing I really recommend doing is have a look at the student view. So once you've created your assignment, you can actually click on the options button and see what the students see. So it might be that you have actually missed something out. And so without having students coming to you and getting confused, you can actually check, is there a deadline? How do I submit my work? Do I upload something? Do I write it in the OneNote book? Have I added a rubric? So it's quite easy to miss something out. So just to check it as a student ensures that they know exactly what they need to do. So that's something that I always recommend if you have the time. Now, I want to just talk about a few ways that you can actually increase engagement with assignments. And I just want to talk briefly about connection, collaboration and choice. So rather than just sending an assignment to the students, I want to kind of integrate it with the team's experience. So first of all, with connection, students who feel a strong connection with their learning environment and feel that their contributions matter will normally demonstrate a greater engagement and participation in the class. So rather than just sending assignments to them, let's use Teams chat. Let's use praise and react, have use channels effectively, and have students actually connect both with the teacher and other people in the class. So students are the learning partners rather than just someone who's doing an assignment and handing it in. And there might be regular contact, so there might be a response to a conversation in a chat once a week or once a day, depending on the class. But by keeping everything in Teams, you'll be able to see how students are interacting. We're going to look at insights later on. But also students will feel that they are part of the community. So really helps with connection, but also collaboration. So student collaboration helps address the social and emotional needs alongside their academic learning. So when you've got a collaborative classroom where students are working on Word documents together, where they are collaborating in a OneNote class notebook, that you'll generally see greater engagement and student success. So if Teams is your one location for everything, and that's where they collaborate with their classmates, that's where students can share their learning, you can also have group assignments as well. So you can either manually set up groups when you create your assignment, or you can have Teams automatically put students into groups. So that's really great for collaboration as well. And then finally, choice is a really great way of engaging students. It was the American education and childhood specialist Jim Fay said, teachers gain the cooperation they need when they give away the control they don't need. So I think that's a really great thing to take in mind when you are setting assignments. So give choices. So maybe you've got a number of problems and students choose a particular problem. Maybe they choose who they work with. Maybe they choose the order that they do things. So let's look at what students are creating. Let's look at what they're producing, which I think is really great. Give the students choice with assignments, and also give student voice with the team's discussions and collaboration aspects. Microsoft Teams provides a platform for communication, collaboration, and innovation, as well as a place for educators to monitor the progress of students in a variety of ways. So we're looking at a few main ways here of formative, summative, individualized, and just in time. So these are all things you do when you're monitoring students' progress in the traditional classroom. But how might we do this in a digital classroom? So I've just put a few ideas on the screen here, and I'm going to demonstrate some of the ways you can leverage the power of Microsoft 365 to organize, evaluate, and innovate in the digital classroom. So you can see here I've got, I won't read this all out for you, but if you can think of some other ways, feel free to put those in the chat. What sort of things do you do in the traditional classroom that transfer well to the digital classroom? You can use meetings, forms, assignments. You can use the Microsoft Learning tools, which is great for individualized learning. You've got tools to help with reading, writing, languages, mathematics, and so on. I've mentioned assignments quite a few times in this table. So we're going to look at a few ways in which you can use assignments to really help monitor student progress, and hopefully you'll pick up some useful tips along the way. So first of all, I just want to mention rubrics. Rubrics are available in any assignment that you send to individual students or groups of students or the whole class. You can actually reuse, download, and share rubrics both across your school and between schools. Students are able to access the rubric at any time while they're doing the assignment, so they know what they are being graded on, for example. And as a teacher, when you come to mark students' work, all you need to do is click the cell that responds to how that student has performed. So a really great little tool, and as you can see, you can download as a CSV, reuse, share with others. So great for both the teacher to monitor the students and the students for self-regulation as well. The other thing you can do is review student work. So even if a grade is not needed, you can see whether students have viewed work, whether they've handed it in, and you can actually return work to the students to continue working on before you give them a final grade. The other thing is being able to give feedback during the grading. So as you're grading a student's piece of work within Teams, you can have the Word document open, and you can have the feedback pane at the side. So you can give them feedback on the actual assignment that they've done, but you can also add in-document comments. So this can be a really useful way if, for example, students are doing an extended task or writing an essay in English or something like that. You can actually have a conversation with the students within the document, and you can refer back to that at any time. Another really useful thing is being able to use the class notebooks. So whether you are giving assignments through the assignments in Microsoft Teams, or whether you're just using the notebook for taking notes and working individually, even working in a collaboration space, as a teacher, you can go in and give feedback and see how the students are doing. They can respond to each other using text, ink, audio, stickers, loads of great ways that you can work within OneNote. And as a teacher, you can monitor how the students are working together, as well as give your own feedback to the students. So I'm just going to mention a few different scenarios that would come up in a traditional classroom, and look at some of the ways that you might use this within Microsoft Teams. So for example, this first scenario is, how can we assess understanding? So if we're in a remote learning environment, for example, one of the things I've used quite a lot is raise your hand if you understand something. So the students can press the raise hand button within Microsoft Teams, or they can use the reactions. So maybe a thumbs up means that you agree with a statement, and the quizzical face means that you're not sure. Type an emoji into the chat that represents how you're feeling. So you can do that in an online meeting, but you can also do that within channels. So if you're showing a video, for example, within Teams or within the classroom, students can have a discussion and give real-time feedback. You can also use polls. So in a Microsoft Teams meeting now, you can launch polls as the meeting is progressing, but you can also set these up beforehand and just launch them when you're ready to launch them. And also within any channel, you can use Microsoft Forms. There's a poll, which is kind of a mini multiple choice version of Microsoft Forms that you can add directly into a conversation. Another useful one is just using a standard Microsoft form. You might set it as an assignment, or you could just create a form and put the link into your channel to check students' understanding at the end of a topic. Or you can even use that at the start of a topic to check for prior understanding. Another scenario which is really important is a collaborative assignment. So there's lots of different ways that students can collaborate within Microsoft Teams. You might, for example, have them collaborate on a PowerPoint where each student has one slide to design. If you're doing online learning, you can use breakout rooms where different students can go and have a conversation and create something live in Microsoft Teams. There's also Microsoft Whiteboard that can be used within a Teams meeting, but also can be added into channels or used as a standalone app. And there's some really great education templates as well. If you haven't used Microsoft Whiteboard, do go and check those out. And of course, you've got your Files tab. Every channel within Microsoft Teams has a Files tab, so you can put all of your collaborative documents in there. And if you've set up, for example, private channels, you can have files just for those group of students that are working together there. And then finally, how can we ensure that we are differentiating? We are differentiating the work. We can assign individual assignments to individual students. So rather than sending out assignment to the whole class, you might give particular assignments that might be at a different level to a different student. You can have a private channel to support those students who might need some additional language support or some additional math support or whatever it might be. And again, when you're sending assignments to students, you can actually return it to the students with comments on how to improve it before you give it a final mark and put those marks in your gradebook. So lots of great ways in Microsoft Teams to monitor student progress and help them along their learning journey. We're going to now consider some of the ways that you can promote social and emotional learning within Microsoft Teams. I'm going to refer to the 5 core competencies from CASEL. If you don't know the CASEL Social and Emotional Learning Framework, you can find out more at casel.org. There are fantastic resources there to support you in your classroom. There are whole school frameworks that you can take and adapt. And there are really 5 core competencies that make up social and emotional learning. So we've got self-awareness, which is recognizing your own strengths and limitations, defining your purpose. Self-management is managing your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors so that you can achieve your goals. Social awareness is understanding others' perspectives and empathizing with others. Relationship skills is establishing and maintaining healthy and supportive relationships, communicating, listening, cooperating, collaborating, and negotiating. And then finally, responsible decision making is making caring and constructive choices about your personal behaviors and social interactions. So these are all things that you can obviously promote face-to-face in the classroom, but I'm going to show you a few ways that you can do that digitally, whether that's in a hybrid environment, whether that's using Teams as a tool to support learning, or whether that's in a remote learning situation. So let's have a look. So self-awareness, a really nice idea is to use the class notebook in Teams so that students can manage their goals. So what are they going to do in this term or in this unit of work? Another great app that's included now for free across all Microsoft Class Teams is the Reflect app. Go and find out about this if you don't know already. Really great little app where you can ask students to reflect on their personal and social, and social emotions, how they feel about their learning and their goals. So the students can answer the question with an emoji and then expand on that by clicking on a word. So if a student feels creative, a nice little monster comes up showing that they're full of imagination and original ideas. So there's some cute little monsters here, and I think the Reflect monsters can be a really fun app to support student self-awareness in the classroom. Another useful one is using the calendar. So everyone has their Outlook calendar, and it's tied into the Teams calendar. So they're both the same. If you put something in Outlook, it appears in Teams and vice versa. You can also, when you set an assignment, choose to automatically populate the educators and the students' calendars with due dates. So that can be a really useful way to help students manage their time. If they can see when assignments are coming up, they can obviously plan and work towards those. So the other thing with assignments, as we mentioned earlier today, is just make sure that you are using clear directions and descriptions. That will help students manage their time. If they know what the learning outcomes are, if they know that there are exemplar materials that they can access, that's going to help them work towards their goals as well. Now, social awareness. I think the Praise app that you can use within posts in channels is great. Being able to recognize and celebrate others. So here we've got an example of a student sending praise to another student for helping them learn how to use Flipgrid. So you can send different images to students, and that gets recognized within the class. But also as a member of staff, you can model that. So if a student's been particularly helpful or has been particularly caring, send them some praise, and then other students will get into the habit of using that as well. Also, use @mentions to get assistance and foster those relationships. So if students have got a channel where they can support each other, encourage them to ask for help and try and support each other before they come to the teacher. And that actually really raises the cooperation part of social awareness as well. Relationship skills. So you can use private channels for group projects, and as we mentioned earlier, you can now set assignments for groups of students to work on together privately in a PowerPoint or in a Word document or something like that. So you can have a place where students can feel comfortable to develop those skills and that collaborative learning without the rest of the class watching on. You can also use the collaboration spaces in OneNote, and you've got different options for that. So in OneNote, if you make a collaboration space, you can have it so that all students can collaborate. You can manually set up different groups for students to collaborate, and you can choose whether other people can view what they're doing or whether it's private just to them. And you can also change that after. So maybe students are going to build something together privately and then open that up for the rest of the class to view or even edit at a later date. And decision making. As well as using the Reflect app that we've just touched on, another common idea is, or another useful idea is to perhaps use a Teams assignment as an exit ticket. So at the end of a lesson, they have to fill in a quick assignment about how they felt about their choices and what they could improve next time and that sort of thing. So there's a whole lot of ways that you can support social and emotional learning within Teams. And I'm sure everyone viewing today has used Teams in other ways. So if you've got something, a great way of using Teams for social and emotional learning, please share that in the chat. Or if you're viewing this later on, please share on Twitter or LinkedIn with the hashtag EduDay2022. Insights in Microsoft Teams provides data to ensure equity and access and opportunities to break down barriers and celebrate student success. You've got at-a-glance data to catch up on all of your students' Teams activity. So let's just look at a couple of examples here. So you access the Insights dashboard by choosing Insights from your team. So I'm in a physical science team and I click on Insights. And here is the Insights dashboard. So I can see, for example, that Floris was often late for meetings last week. So different things will be highlighted here depending on what your students are doing. We've got another example here where Hannah hasn't yet viewed the Julius Caesar assignment. A little bit odd that I'm doing a Julius Caesar assignment in a physical science class, but let's leave that to one side. So you can see if students have been absent or if students have not accessed a resource and those sorts of things. So you can also find out information about how they've been responding to Reflect. So if you're setting up a Reflect for the students, that's the one where the students pick an emoji and say how they're feeling. We can see, for example, here that this student is feeling nervous. And as you use this more and more, you'll be able to see trends. So perhaps a particular student is always nervous on a Thursday, for example, or perhaps you'll find that certain students are always responding in the same way, and then there's a sudden change. So you can get some really great insights into how the students are feeling just at a glance. And that's what this is all about. There's a whole lot of data that's stored in Microsoft Teams, and this is a way of surfacing it in a really useful and informational way for staff. You can find information on communication. So you can see how many students are posting in a particular channel and responding. You can see it for the whole of your team, but you can also focus down on a particular channel. So perhaps if you've got breakout channels or you've got particular group work channels, you can actually see what students are doing, who's doing the heavy lifting, and all that sort of stuff. So some really great resources there. The assignments status as well is particularly useful. So you can actually see at a glance how many you've assigned a particular assignment to, how many have viewed it, how many have turned it in, whether they were late, whether they've handed it in multiple times, and so on. So you can find some great information there. Similarly with grades, so you can actually see across a whole class how the grades are distributed. So you can see a summary of the class as a whole. You can do it per assignment, per time period, and even look at individual students. So just by playing around with the filters up here, you can find out the information that you need to know when you need to know it. If you're using the Reading Progress app, so this is the app that will test students' reading fluency. You get some really great insights into how your class is doing. So you can actually see whether there were mispronunciations or omissions and those sorts of things over a particular assignment. You can see the average reading speed. You can see which words were the most challenging, and you can do that filter by genre, by reading level, by time period, and you can actually see those words that students have found challenging. So they've mispronounced them or they've omitted them and so on. So you can see that for a whole class, but you can also drill down into a particular student. So I can see here that this student has this level of accuracy. She's reading at this speed, and how many assignments she's done in the last 28 days and so on. So it can be really useful if you just want to focus on, sorry, I'm just going to go back there, if you just want to focus on one particular student. The other thing you can do is, because this is all data driven, is you can get access to the raw data and use it in other ways. So you can export, for example, all of the assignments that you've done with your class, and you can then put that into another learning management system, or you can make particular charts or graphs, or analyze it in whichever way you want. So everything is exportable to Excel as well. So have a look at the Insights dashboard next time you're on Teams. How can it save you time? How can it help you give feedback to students and provide help? And what are your next steps with using Insights? I trust you found the ideas in today's session helpful. If you want further help or some training, I'm just going to share with you a couple of places where you can go. First of all, you can get great help within the Microsoft Teams app itself. If you click the little help icon in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got access to topics, training, and information about what's new. So here I am on the training page, and there's information specifically for schools. So there's a quick start guide. There are some external links, as well as some short videos showing you how to set up a team, manage a team, set assignments, organize collaboration, all the things that we've discussed today. So your first port of call is probably to look at help within Teams itself. Now, Microsoft has also put together an educator center as part of its Microsoft Learn platform. If you go to microsoft.com/learn, you'll find all sorts of information on coding, on administration, on using tools for teaching and learning. But there's a special center especially for educators. So if you go to microsoft.com/learn and then click on Educator Center, you'll find professional learning, product guides, all sorts of information specifically for educators. So here's the Educator Center. You can find out information about blended, remote and hybrid learning, empowering student voice, Minecraft, Flipgrid. There's content from NASA, all sorts of amazing stuff for you to go and explore. If you go and explore the Teams area, you'll find interactive demos, you'll find guides for staff and students. You can keep up to date with the blog and find out more about training and webinars and events like we're doing in this session. So microsoft.com/learn and then click on Educator Center, and you can find and explore all of this great content. So thank you very much for joining me today. Again, I put my contact details there. You can find me on Twitter @StandoutEd. You can email me at spayne@standouted.com. Remember to use the hashtag EduDay2022, and thanks again.